Every American deserves to be treated equally. Though our country is seen as the place for opportunity and freedom, not all of us share the same opportunities and freedoms as others. One particular group whose freedoms are under debate in the United States population are LGBTs, lesbians, gays, bisexuals, and transgenders. We're living in a world with the first president to ever endorse same-sex marriages and state that every single American, regardless of sexual orientation, deserves to be treated equally in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of society. So now, more than ever, the debate of discrimination over LGBT rights is heating up. The topic of LGBT employment is important to me because a lot of my best friends are gay, so it seems crazy to me that they don't get the same opportunities as I do just because of their sexuality. With changing ideals and attitudes in modern-day society, now more than ever, it's important to recognize that when hiring, promoting, terminating, and compensating employees, if one has the right credentials, it shouldn't matter if you're gay, straight, bisexual, or transgender. First, I'll explain why LGBTs should be hired from a human rights standpoint. Next, I'll talk about how maintaining LGBT equality in a workplace is economically smart. And finally, I'll talk about legislation on LGBT rights and what you can do to end discrimination. To start off, everyone deserves basic human rights, and no one should be discriminated based on sexuality. Just because a person has a different lifestyle than you doesn't mean they shouldn't receive the same basic rights as the heterosexual members of society. Sexuality is just like race, ethnicity, or gender. There isn't a single sexuality that's superior to others. Homosexuality goes back to as far as ancient Greece. It's not going away anytime soon, and it's not just a phase. Within the last 50 years, there's been an overwhelming amount of support on the subject of equality, but not enough support for LGBT equality. LGBT workers should be protected from employment discrimination. No one deserves to go to work fearing termination because of their beliefs. According to Ronald J. Alsop's article titled Pride vs. Prejudice in the Academic Search Premier, the first bill to protect gay rights was introduced in 1974, and more than 35 years later, gays cannot count on federal protection from discriminatory employment practices. This means that gays who are beginning their careers in 1974 are still vulnerable to homophobia in their workplaces, even though they're now nearing retirement age. Technically, a company can deny employment to a qualified applicant or terminate an employee at will purely because of their sexual orientation. This means that if an employer finds out that an employee is gay and they don't approve of their sexuality, they could fire them. Some companies won't hire LGBTs because they believe they are less healthy than heterosexual candidates. In the Right Wing Watch Project, Linda Harvey interviewed Gary Glenn, a prominent anti-gay activist. She warned that companies should be wary of hiring lesbian and gay employees because of what Glenn calls the severe medical consequences of being gay. Just because LGBTs are different than their opposers doesn't mean they're sick. There is absolutely no correlation between being unhealthy and being gay. LGBTs are just like any other worker or potential worker and should not be discriminated against. One organization that excludes LGBTs is the Boy Scouts of America. A good example of this story is the story of Lauren Jeselnik, reported by Dawn Wolf of Pride Source, where a kitchen worker at a Boy Scout camp in Michigan was asked to sign a document saying she was fired because of her sexuality. Especially in our economy, where it's becoming increasingly difficult to find a job, it shouldn't be even more difficult for hardworking LGBTs to receive and maintain a job. Speaking of the economy, virtually all large corporations represent diverse clientele, and if you alienate a community such as LGBTs, you face the threat of being boycotted. One specific example of this occurred in May 2006 when Ford decided to pull their advertisements from gay publications such as The Advocate. According to Ton Henneman, an online survey by gaytrendsetters.com and lesbiantrendsetters.com found that nearly 66% of users who said they had leased or owned a Ford vehicle vowed that they would not do so again based upon the perceived anti-gay LGBT policies by the company. Another example is Ohio in 1993. In her article entitled Boycotts, Linda Harrap reported in the GLBTQ Social Sciences, with the approval of 63% of the voters, adopted a charter amendment to ban enactment or enforcement of laws protecting citizens against discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. So basically, any state law that was passed, such as local LGBT employment anti-discrimination laws, would be void. As a consequence, many organizations have refused to hold conventions in the city. In 2004, the Greater Cincinnati Convention and Visitors Bureau reported that the city had lost at least $46.5 million in convention businesses since the amendment's passage. Obviously, the LGBT community has economic buying power, so keeping them on your company's side is a very good idea. So not only is LGBT employment the morally sound thing to do, but it's also economically smart as well. So far, you've learned about the moral and economic importance of LGBT equality in the workplace. Now I'll explain to you the legislation behind LGBT rights in employment and what you're going to do to put an end to discrimination. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission protects Americans from discrimination within the workforce based on race, gender, sex, religion, etc. However, it does not include sexual orientation. Scott Oswald stated in the Washington Blade that 21 states, plus the District of Columbia, ban employment discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender expression identity. In 29 states, it's still legal to fire someone because they're gay. The Employment Non-Discrimination Act, ENDA, would ban workplace discrimination over the basis of sexual orientation across the country. ENDA has been introduced in Congress but has never been passed. It will offer Congress the opportunity to ensure workplace equality and protect LGBT workers from employment discrimination. According to the Ed Vitigliano article, How ENDA Could Begin an Uncivil War, in the American Family Association, those who oppose ENDA believe that there is no need for the creation of homosexuals as a protected class of employees, especially when it hinges on freedom of association. If freedom of association was evident across employment, then the EEOC wouldn't exist and we could choose to not hire someone because of their religion, race, or gender. But that's already been deemed unconstitutional. All in all, employment discrimination based on the subject of sexuality is a huge debate. Even if you don't approve of different sexualities, everyone deserves to be treated with equality. As it's getting harder and harder to get a job in our economy, there shouldn't be a bias that could make it even more difficult to attain a job in this market. To review, LGBT discrimination in the workforce should end because LGBT employment equality is morally sound, LGBT employment equality is economically sound, and also because a national law would ban workplace discrimination over the basis of sexual orientation across the country. One thing you could do is to sign a petition to urge National Geographic to speak out against the Boy Scouts of America's anti-gay policy and issue a disclaimer before airing their new TV series, Are You Tougher Than a Boy Scout? After hearing about the termination of Lauren Jesnick, as I stated before. Please go to the website shown at the bottom of the screen and sign the petition. This small step towards LGBT rights is simple and easy to do and could make a huge impact. With changing ideals and attitudes in modern-day society, now more than ever, it's important to recognize that when hiring, promoting, terminating, compensating employees, if one has the right credentials, it shouldn't matter if you're lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. Thank you.